Spring in the highlands of the Acadian forest is a fickle time. Well into April, you can have a period of time where there is no snow on the ground and the grass is greening. And then in a single night, a blizzard can blow in, dropping 15 centimeters of snow, leaving the landscape so whitewashed it can seem as if spring has given up the ghost. And then, in an instant, the next day the weather turns and suddenly the snow is gone and spring is back, or at least trying to make its way back. And the days themselves typically are far from warm, ranging from just barely over freezing to perhaps 5 to 10 degrees Celsius. And in places like this, the southern exposures, the snow might be mostly gone. But in the tall forest where the shadows are deep and long-standing, snow remains as if a reminder that winter is not far gone. And indeed winter is not far gone, for if one merely turns into a deep hollow, there one will find that cold air has gathered like liquid falling into a bowl, keeping the land locked hard in winter's grip. But walk 100 more meters, and once again you are in spring. But overall, as spring is slow and fickle in coming, the plants are cautious to return to their growth. Trees in particular invest great energy in sprouting leaves, and much of the herbaceous foliage that grows upon the forest floor does not have energy to spare. And so the forest itself will seem, by and large, lifeless and dormant for several more weeks until there is more evidence that spring itself is well set in. This is an ephemeral and yet magical time of the year when the bones of trees stand against the sky and northern flying squirrels, such as this one, emerge from their daytime slumber, perhaps to contemplate the changing landscape. But I think one of the most interesting aspects of this time of year are what I have come to call the bones of spring. We tend to think of spring as a time of rebirth and new growth, and it is indeed. But if one merely walks through the forest, one will find the remnants of fungi of the previous year, such as this horsehoof fungus, Fomes fomentarius, long since dead and giving in to decomposition by other fungi. If I were to break it open, we would also discover that it is being eaten by insects. And if we press into this deep forest, here where the bones of spring lie, we find an odd landscape. Summery on this side, facing south, and on the other side, there is still much snow and ice over the land, making it treacherous to walk. Spring is setting in so firmly that here on the southern exposure, I have found the very first morning cloak of the year. They are to be seen all throughout the warm months here in the highlands, and to me its presence is a sure sign of spring's returning. And just beyond the morning cloak is another bone of spring, a small but tough bracket fungus, almost lost in the tangle of twigs and bushes. It did its growing last summer, but its husk remains upon the tree, having fulfilled its task and shed its spores. A bit deeper into this valley of old-growth forest, one finds an exceedingly shallow pond. If we freeze the video and transform to a still image, we can zoom in and discover that the floor of this little spring-fed pond is teeming with small life, evidenced by the greenness of the water and fed by the leaves which fall into it. Down the trunk of another great old tree, we find what almost could be described as columns of fungal bones, looking like thousands of seashells sprouting from this old tree. From the top, we can see their growth ridges, and some persons might easily confuse these for useful Traumates versicolor, the turkey tail, but they are not. Just a look-alike, not very colorful, but beautiful in their own right. The early forest is so quiet now, one does not hear even a bird, and the sound of the wind soughing through the boughs is strange, for there is no rustle of leaves. There is only the clatter of branches moving against branches. But in 2 weeks, this northern forest will radically transform, becoming green, filled with spring flowers, and a variety of wildlife: American goldfinches, spruce grouse, tiny salamanders that hug the forest floor, and creatures like this toad, which somehow manages to find a way to live even in this cold landscape. And lording over them all will be the great ones, apex predators such as this red-tailed hawk, perched at the top of a tree at the edge of a forest break, perhaps already resting from a meal of field mouse, or waiting until the winds are just right to take flight, where it might glide for hours among the complex thermals that rise over the highlands as the sun unevenly heats the wrinkled landscape. Though the red-tailed hawk is a common enough sight here in the highlands, I never cease to marvel when I see them. What magnificent creatures. This one was flying at over 30 meters altitude over a wide forest break. It is amazing to contemplate that even from that height, they can spot a mouse or a vole moving through the grass. A bit further, we find more of the bones of spring. These are old turkey tails. Well, they are probably not that old. For one, they are too colorful, and turkey tails tend to lose their color as they decay. They are fairly common in these woods and might sprout from any old stump or log once the mycelia, which is effectively their body which burrows through the dead wood, has matured enough that it is ready and has ample energy to sprout in the form of fruiting bodies to reproduce by dropping spores. There were thousands upon this one stump. They are amazingly colorful, and when one looks at them up close, one discovers their topsides are covered with a velvet-like fiber, while their undersides presents an alien landscape of tens of thousands of pits, each only a fraction of a millimeter in size. Turkey tails are often sought for their purported medicinal value, but they are often confused for lookalikes like this small bracket. Yet this one is easily distinguished because its underside is toothed, very large teeth in fact. Among the many, many bones of last year's fungi, we find new fungal life sprouting from branches and trunks here and there, such as this Fomitopsis pinicola, sometimes called an orange belt fungus. And on the forest floor, if one pays close attention, one finds tiny fungi, or at least fungal hybrids, such as these pink earth lichen, Dibaeus beomyces. They sprouted last autumn or last winter, and may have already dropped their spores, making them also fungal bones. And in this ancient tree we have another decaying fungus, so old and black I cannot identify it. And this remarkable fungal bone doubtless emerged late last autumn. When I touched it, it emitted clouds of rotted spores like an ancient puffball. These too are the bones of fungi, but one I absolutely do not know. Though as fungal bones, they look very much like pale and wilted tulips. These are rare and new to me, and quite remarkable. And even deeper in the forest, we find the log of an ancient tree long since knocked down by the high winter winds, and it was covered by thousands of fungal bones, these long dead bracket fungi running the full length of the 10-meter log. As the old forest comes to life, I think this is an especially good time to consider those fungal bones. Few people are aware of just how profoundly our world, our ecosystems, are dependent on these humble little organisms. They bring about biodecay, which recycles nutrients into the landscape, and this forms the base of the food web, which enables all other organisms to live. And when the fungi have done their job, they too decay and contribute to the environment. Thank you for watching. The Naturalist program is committed to the reliable coverage of natural science and environmental issues. If you like our program, please take a moment to subscribe and like.
Autumn leaves are turning brown, branches bare.